Oh, I woke up from hibernation in my wooden coffin. My name is Raccoon, and yes, I still doing woodworking. Thank God, honestly. Otherwise, I would completely lost my mind no time. Rejoice, brothers and sisters. Today we're doing some very basic craft. The workflow is that simple. I grab a profile from Home Depot, cut it into equal pieces, drill the holes, shape them, sand, polish, finish, and wax, and put everything on a string. What did you expect? Beads are one of the oldest forms of craft ever. I don't even know why I'm explaining this. Oh wait, I do, because I have 4 hours of raw footage of me crafting this stuff, and I need something to fill that runtime. But even this video has a plot twist. We are going to do some absolute bull nonsense. Normally, people make beads using a lathe or special drill press bits. I have neither, so instead, we are going to mine spherical objects using nothing but my hands. First thing I did was run to the Dremel, because in my head, everything with spins and cuts must be faster with something that doesn't spin and cut. Wrong, I spent 30 minutes making one bead. 30 minutes, girl! That's 1200 minutes for all 40 beads. Or 20 hours. You're welcome, I did the math for you. That's an unacceptable luxury. When you make a product, you must calculate the time spent and the cost of the final piece. Always. Even if you're nobody. Otherwise, you will turn into the miner extracting crafts purely for entertainment of the crowd. Falling into despair, I realized I needed him, a wood carving knife. I mean, ancient craft, ancient methods. Makes sense. This set was gifted to me not too long ago, and I'm really not that deep into knife carving. The last time I carved anything was a brooch for my fanny pack using this absolute garbage set from Walmart. Seriously, if you ever think about buying those, think again. I was carving my fingers way more than the wood. You can see how awkward my movements are with this knife, but praise the cosmos, this one turned out to be actually sharp, unlike that one. And along the way, I also learned how to sharpen these knives, which honestly made me happy. So yeah, I can now consider myself a certified carver. But at least by this point, I figured out how to carve spears. Are they perfect? No. But this is my artistic vision. And if you disagree, I will stick my fish crawdad on you, okay? I also found it funny that I basically had to play Blender in real life. Like, I had to carve these rough polygons onto a cylinder first. That simplified the task a lot and helped me cut the initial time from 30 minutes per bead down to 10 for first 15 pieces, and then to about 7-8 minutes for the rest. So yeah, production time dropped from 20 hours to roughly 6. But of course, we still need to spend about the same amount of time on everything else. 40 bids later. After these comes some light but very monotonous work. Yeah, if you want to get into the woodworking, you really need to learn how to enjoy sanding and finishing. I still can get used to filming these stages because I slip into a certain state of mind where it's hard to focus on anything other than I'm doing. The only possible distraction if your beat suddenly turn into a fucking cannonball shooting up and disappearing into the tiniest crack somewhere behind the shelves right next to the Bob's remains and then drifting away with him into the Belarusian Sea. Блять. Pardon, dramas. As you can see, at this stage I went with a Dremel and an 80 grit sanding drum. Personally, I don't recommend using anything other than 80 grit if you want to preserve the wood's porosity for later. Maybe if you're working with a softwood, 240 grit could make sense. But here we are dealing with a solid chunk of a walnut, not pine. By the way, just for the sake of experiment, I decided to see how long it takes to sand one bead by hand. It took me 10 minutes and I still had to clean it up with a Dremel afterwards. Don't judge me. Back home we call all engraving machines Dremel, okay? So let's write this down. Something that spins and sands is faster than something that doesn't spin and sands. Dremel work takes me about 5 minutes per bead. I decided to combine the burning stage with the first round of polishing. We're going to do the burning using a broken drill bit because obviously that's more true to DIY culture, bro. I do the burn in 2 passes, but each time knock off the first charred layer with a sandpaper. That way I avoid uneven burn marks. After that, I polish using a buffer bits. They're great at bringing out the wood texture instead of smearing it. You can clearly see the difference between the pieces where I only used the sandpaper and the pieces where I started using the buffer bits. Both of these items are about a year old and neither of them has been repolished since. Yeah, the difference might seem small, but over the long run, the people who actually wear your pieces will thank you. The only other method that, in my experience, preserve the texture just as well is a card scraper. But on the small details, that's a very labor intensive process. For example, that's how I finished my brush. Well, not exactly with a proper card scraper. I found a random piece of metal that kinda worked like one, but let's not get into that. By the way, one thing I really love about the burned wood is that over time, some fibers start to line up and even more texture comes through. And depending on how often the jewelry is worn, that process can take anywhere from 2 years to God knows how many. Alright, the final polishing stage. I honestly haven't seen many people do this, but I'm thankfully meticulous with my work. I'll keep this one short. I use 2 felt attachments. First goes the felt bit with a polishing compound on it. Don't use too much compound, especially when it comes to colored pastes. Otherwise you can end up packing way too much material into the pores, and getting it out later is a nightmare. After that, I switched to a clean felt attachment to remove any excess polishing paste from the wood. It's really better not to be lazy here and do it properly because leftover paste will eventually start attracting dirt and dust. Now we generously soak everything in wax, and yes, forgive me not for using fancy little gloves like you see in other videos. I use my fingers and a random piece of denim from some old jeans. Fingers are actually great at pushing wax directly into the wood pores. And with the fancy gloves, my pieces constantly try to escape and fly off somewhere. So pick your poison, my fingers or a nice crunchy layer of dust on your jewelry. Just make sure you're not allergic to wax. In my case, a mix of wax and orange oil. Let the pieces chill in this waxy soup for about 5 minutes so the wax has time to soak in. After that, you can grab a cloth and wipe everything down thoroughly so it doesn't feel like you were robbed by bees and turned into the foundation of a hive. Huge thanks to everyone who watched till the end. If you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate a subscribe, a bell click, and if you're not too lazy, leave a meaningful comment. It genuinely helps the channel growth. I decided to use a battle change instead of the cord. Honestly, it looks pretty solid. Drink tea, comrades. And as my father used to say, сука, нахуй, дон, блядь, сука.